Before Daredevil was a TV show, before he was part of a cinematic universe, before anyone argued online about what was canon and what wasn't, there was just a kid walking into a comic book store. The kind with a little bell on the door that jingled when it opened. The kind that smelled like old paper, plastic sleeves, and a very specific brand of carpet that probably hadn't been replaced since the late 90s. Long white boxes stacked against the walls. Posters slowly fading in the sunlight. A glass display case full of things that felt important, but completely unaffordable. And somewhere behind the counter, a guy who seemed to know everything about superheroes, and absolutely nothing about customer service. The kid didn't have a plan, didn't know story arcs, didn't know writers, didn't know continuity. He just grabbed whatever looked cool, and then he saw it. A Daredevil comic, dark red cover, moody, serious. It didn't look like the bright superhero stuff on TV. It looked heavier, like something meant for older kids, which immediately made it the most interesting thing in the store. He flipped it open, and that's when he realized something. Superheroes could be sad, like deeply sad, and like this man should probably talk to someone professionally. Sad. It wasn't just punching villains and saving the world. It was guilt, failure, fear, responsibility, and for a lot of kids, that was the first time superhero stories felt real, because Daredevil didn't feel like a god, or a billionaire, or an alien. He felt like a guy trying to do the right thing and messing it up constantly, and somehow still getting back up. Anyway, let's talk about the blind lawyer who fights ninjas. Daredevil is a blind lawyer who fights crime at night and somehow still has better time management than most Marvel heroes. Also, he's Catholic, which becomes extremely relevant. This is Marvel in 5 minutes, where we explain decades of comic history before Marvel retcons it again. Today, Daredevil. Daredevil first appeared in Daredevil #1 in April 1964. Created by Stan Lee and Bill Everett, with early design contributions from Jack Kirby. And yes, comic historians will absolutely fight about who did what. Comic book creation history is basically group project trauma. Matt Murdock grows up in Hell's Kitchen, New York, which sounds like a villain base, but is actually just a neighborhood with strong opinions. His father, Battling Jack Murdock, is a boxer who wants Matt to avoid the violent life he lived. Matt is smart, studious, responsible, so naturally Marvel punishes him immediately. He pushes a man out of the way of a truck carrying radioactive chemicals. The chemicals blind him, but enhance his other senses to superhuman levels. Because in Marvel, radiation is less tragic accident and more career opportunity. He develops what becomes known as radar sense, which lets him perceive the world like a living sonar system. He can hear heartbeats, smell emotional states, sense movement, which means lying around him is stressful. He is later trained by Stick, a blind martial arts master. Because Marvel loves thematic consistency, Stick teaches him combat, discipline, and how to bottle up emotions until they become plot. Early Daredevil comics were lighter in tone, more swashbuckling, more traditional superhero adventure, but everything changed in the late 1970s when Frank Miller took over writing and art duties. Frank Miller transformed Daredevil from fun acrobatic hero into existential Catholic crime noir ninja. He introduced Elektra, the Hand, and a much darker psychological tone. Miller later wrote Born Again, 1986, with artist David Mazzucchelli. This story is widely considered one of the greatest superhero stories ever written. Kingpin systematically destroys Matt's life. Financially, socially, emotionally, spiritually. It's less a fight and more a demolition. Later writers continued redefining Daredevil. Brian Michael Bendis in the early 2000s grounded the character in realistic crime storytelling. Legal consequences became real. Identity exposure became central. This run heavily influenced the Netflix show's tone. Ed Brubaker followed with even darker psychological exploration. Mark Waid then shifted the tone unexpectedly toward optimism. Still trauma, just in brighter colors. Chip Zdarsky's run, 2019 to 2023, is considered the modern definitive take. It explores morality, responsibility, and whether vigilantism itself can be ethical, which is a complicated question when your hobby involves throwing criminals into dumpsters. Daredevil's villains reflect his grounded world. Kingpin is not superpowered. He's just extremely intelligent, wealthy, and violent. Crime as infrastructure. Bullseye is chaos personified. A man who turns anything into a weapon, including your emotional stability. The Hand introduces mystical elements. because even grounded Marvel eventually involves ancient ninja cults. Typhoid Mary represents psychological fragmentation, mirroring Matt's internal struggle. Daredevil stories consistently explore guilt, redemption, justice versus punishment, faith, identity, suffering. Matt Murdock cannot jaywalk without needing confession. With Daredevil now firmly in the MCU, fan theories about his future are expanding. Some believe he could anchor a street-level Avengers team. Others think he may serve as a moral counterbalance in Avengers Doomsday. There's also speculation he could become a key emotional lens in Secret Wars, grounding multiversal chaos in human perspective. Because when gods, variants, and cosmic entities collide, you need one guy who just punches criminals and questions his life choices. Daredevil endures because he's human. He fails. He doubts. He suffers, but he continues, which is either inspiring or deeply concerning. But Daredevil isn't the most psychologically complicated hero in New York. Next time, we're covering someone who has powers she never asked for, solves crimes she barely gets paid for, and would absolutely ghost the Avengers group chat. Give your best guess in the comment section.